AI will not replace auditors, but auditors that use AI will replace auditors that don't.
This episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast is sponsored by BQE Core. As many of you know, I'm all about the niches and niche apps. Putting your business clients in the proper niche app is providing them with a 100% solution versus at best the 85% solution of a standalone accounting app. If you have clients that are architects, engineers, consultants, or lawyers, Core is the app for them to best manage their firm, increase their staff productivity, and ultimately increase their profits. You don't need to juggle between multiple apps. Core has it all in an easy-to-use, all-in-one app for project management, including time and expense tracking, budgets, forecasting, client billing, and accounting. Even though Core is an all-in-one platform, it still works nicely with the apps like Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, QuickBooks, Xero, and AccountRite, offering you and your clients the maximum amount of flexibility. Core offers a full-function mobile app and recently launched a cutting-edge voice-based assistant for your smart speaker of choice. To learn even more about BQE Core, head over to cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/core. That is cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/CORE. Did I mention that BQE Core works great for bookkeepers, CPAs, and accounting firms too?
Welcome to the Cloud Accounting Podcast. I'm Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary.
And I'm Rachel Fisch.
Hey, Rachel, thanks for joining us so much on short notice. It's going to be great to have you here for our regular news episode.
Hey, no, it's totally my pleasure. And how it came about was kind of funny. Blake and I were just talking about actually a previous episode about MindBridge. And I had some thoughts about AI in accounting and audit.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you should come back and let's talk about this. So here I am.
And they're a Canadian company, so you have extra cred to speak on this?
Yeah, extra special place in my heart for MindBridge.
Awesome. So we'll talk about MindBridge. I'm eager to learn more about it and AI in accounting and everything that's going on in that world. But first, some breaking news, or at least a story that has just refused to stop breaking over the last 2 weeks, the iNSYNQ outage. We're talking about the cloud hosting company. It's a hosting provider of QuickBooks Online. I'm sorry, not QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop hosting, as well as Sage hosting. And they have been out for, how long is it, David?
We covered it last week. I think it was the June 16th this started. And
June 16th.
They reported it publicly to their customers on the 19th, I think it was.
Yeah. So almost 2 weeks now, they've been, at least some customers we're seeing on Twitter are still unable to access their iNSYNQ cloud desktops. So that's 13 days. On July 16th, iNSYNQ was the victim of a Megacortex ransomware attack. That is the sort of malware that gets into your systems and encrypts files, and then the hackers typically demand payment in Bitcoin to unencrypt them. Paying the hackers, though, doesn't always get your files unencrypted. You're taking a bet. And so apparently many people, even though they're able to get into their iNSYNQ desktops now, there's still some encrypted files. There's an update on the iNSYNQ website as of July 29th. And I should say we're recording July 29th. And this update was at 5:50 Pacific time, so just a few hours ago. It says that, quote, nearly all iNSYNQ customers now have access to their iNSYNQ desktop. Our work isn't done, though, and we'll continue to work around the clock until every desktop is restored. Your applications may not be immediately accessible and or populate to your account. So they're saying most people have access. They're not able to access all their applications. They also go on to say, while we caught the attack early, the malware was able to encrypt some files. We're currently working to determine if they are recoverable. You may see some encrypted files on your desktop with .megacortex as an extension. They are not available to access.
I thought I saw somebody tweet that. I think I saw somebody tweet specifically that they had a file on their desktop that was labeled that.
Yeah. So that's the current status. It is not the best situation. There are definitely still people who aren't able to access. There's folks on Twitter saying that, for instance, just recently today, at RH224 said still can't access and that support lines are ringing busy. Cecilia, username is @itsme_Cecilia B, said yesterday that she was on hold for over an hour and 10 minutes and their server is still down, can't get through to customer support. So it's very, very unfortunate. And, David, why are we talking about cloud hosting on the Cloud Accounting Podcast, right?
We talked about the Megacortex a couple weeks ago. You did extra research after, remember the CCH suffered the same problem.
Yep.
I feel like it was only 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then you did the research in the background that Mega Cortex apparently is all tied to some backdoor in Windows that the NSA discovered, a vulnerability, and now it's being exploited everywhere.
Well, and you found that the NSA issued an advisory months ago, and specifically to
Homeland Security.
Oh, Homeland Security
issued, yes, in October 3rd of 2018, Homeland Security issued a warning to hosting providers that they have reason to believe there's going to be attacks coming and ransomwares.
Do you think these hosting providers were aware of this? Do we know if iNSYNQ knew about this Homeland Security warning at all? It seems like they were not ready for this. But
I don't know. I found this on, there's a whole site. So we call it QuickBooks desktop hosting in our world, right?
Right.
Apparently there's a whole other world, and they call it managed service providers.
Oh, so these are like people who do hosting for all sorts of things, not just
all kinds of
QuickBooks
stuff
or Sage or whatever.
And a lot of what they do a lot of stuff for government agencies as well. Okay. So lots of people use hosting environments. It's not just a QuickBooks hosting thing. So really, I think if you would take like the niche of QuickBooks hosting, they're part of a bigger, they call it managed service providers space that's out there. Because what I did is I started kind of poking around this weekend, and that's how I found this.
I reached out on Twitter to Elliot Luchansky, who is the CEO of iNSYNQ, and asked him if he would come on the podcast. And he replied very quickly and said yes, that he would be happy to join the podcast. He said, "Thank you for reaching out. I'd absolutely be open to this. In fact, I'd appreciate the platform to speak to these points with a neutral party such as yourself." And we were really excited. We were going to have him on today.
Monday. They even tweeted at us. They tweeted because they listened to the podcast that we recorded last week, and they listened to it and said, "Hey, we got extra clarifications. Can't wait to join." And
then on Friday, we got an email saying, and he backed out. So unfortunately, we don't have Elliot on the show to ask him these questions. Like, I still have lots of questions like, how did this happen in the first place? When are these people going to actually get access to their files, right? iNSYNQ was saying that it would be done this weekend, but apparently it's still not. What about the files that are encrypted? Are those ever going to get unencrypted? Like, we just don't know. And
maybe Elliot doesn't know either, right? Like at this point, the ideal situation for him to show up on Monday and be like, everything's fixed, woohoo, right? But they'd obviously, based on what you said was on their site earlier today, they're not out of the weeds yet. And this is, they've probably had a very difficult 14 days.
Yeah. Like, and I don't want to speculate, but that's unfortunately all we can do, because we also invited him to, if he didn't want to come on the show, send us a statement, and then radio silence, nothing.
At least they put a statement on the website of where they're at now, because I think some of the problems they've had is like people were accusing them of turning their Twitter account off, doing fake tweets, deleting Facebook posts, or hiding messages. So
and this goes back to when the whole CCH outage happened, the way that tech companies handle a crisis like this. This was like classic example of what you shouldn't do, at least in my opinion. I don't know what you think, David, but what they were doing at first was basically trying to hide it. They deactivated their Twitter account, apparently. And then on Facebook, they were, I didn't verify this myself, but people are saying that they were deleting or hiding posts from users about the outage. And then,
It's Clue Train 101. Like, again, everybody that has customers should go read the Clue Train Manifesto. Like, you cannot control the message. The conversation is going to happen with or without you, and you have to jump in and join the conversation. You cannot control the conversation. You just can't. It's impossible in this day and age.
So that's what we know about iNSYNQ. The last thing I want to talk about on this subject is Intuit. Because, I have to pull Intuit into everything, right, David? That's like my job, apparently. So one of the sites that I discovered, I think it was somebody on Twitter pointed it out to me, or maybe you found it, David. It's the Intuit Hosting Program website, intuithostingprogram.com. This is a site that lists the authorized hosting companies. So apparently, in order to host QuickBooks, you're actually supposed to be authorized by Intuit. And there's a wall of logos on this site. It looks like 16 companies listed as authorized commercial hosting providers.
Yeah, they almost have like two tiers, like a premium authorized hosts and then like a second tier of some type. Yeah.
So if I were a QuickBooks Desktop customer, this is where I would probably go first to find a host, because I'm looking for somebody who Intuit is recommending to me, right? And right up at the top, it says, the headline is, "Are you using an Intuit authorized hosting company? quote, Intuit partners with more than 20 companies who are thoroughly screened to ensure your data is safe and that your business is not at risk. Intuit authorized hosting companies are listed below. If you have any questions, please contact hostinginfo@intuit.com. So that to me means, oh, hey, Intuit is vouching for the security of these providers, right? My business is not at risk. But then Byron Patrick directed us to the frequently asked questions because Byron.
So he's Byron _CPA on Twitter.
Yeah, and he previously worked in the hosting world. And on the frequently asked questions, which is available via the menu, there is a list of questions. The second to the last one, and you have to actually unfurl it to get this answer. The second to the last question says, what does the authorized commercial host and authorized standard host statement and logo mean? And it says, this statement and logo mean only that Intuit has entered into a written agreement with the commercial or standard host, which legally authorizes them to remotely host certain versions of QuickBooks software for access and usage by properly licensed end users. It does not mean that Intuit sponsors, certifies, prefers, or is officially or exclusively partnered with commercial or standard hosts. Now, another question on the frequently asked questions is, right above that, is my data secure when using the Intuit hosting program? The answer, while Intuit provides legal authorization to participating hosts, Intuit does not certify, guarantee, or warrant individual commercial and standard host services or hosting environments. The commercial and standard hosts who participate in the program are solely responsible for the security, privacy, availability, and backup of QuickBooks data files and the software that they host in accordance with their end user hosting service agreements. So that seems to completely disavow any responsibility and does not match up with what I'm seeing on that commercial hosting program page.
I looking at that page, I can tell you that based on my experience, like the page is a little old based on the branding.
Yeah.
Right. And the format of the page. So it does feel like it's a little bit old. The other reason I'd suspect that page is a little old and out of date as well is the fact that some of these companies have merged with some of the other companies. But
and they still have the separate logos.
Yeah. What concerns me about that page is doing a little bit of Google searches, just type that company name in ransomware, type that company name in hacked. 4 of these companies on that page have now been ransomwared.
So this is 4 of 20.
Well, and I think one of them's in that second tier, whatever I don't understand those 2 levels that they have there.
So three of the top 16 or the commercial hosting providers have been ransomwared. And then there's like the standard hosting program, which has another, 20, a dozen or it's 20 or something like that. Yeah. But that 4 of these companies have been ransomed does not, we can start playing bingo on this thing, right?
But if you just go make the circle a little bit bigger to tax software, and then now CCH, that's 5, right? Is this becoming? This is. In the meantime, I can think of one. So apps.com, there's 650 apps there, right?
Yeah.
They all go through security review once a year to stay on apps.com. You think QuickBooks Online, Xero, all the SaaS products that are out there.
Yeah.
Small business. I can only think of, there was one Comply Right, which is, I think people know them as eFile for Biz. They did have a data breach, but nobody suffered. The true SaaS players don't seem to be suffering this. It's these hosting players that are having these problems.
Yeah. Well, it's because as we've said, hosting relies on old technology that is fundamentally unsecure because it relies on Windows as the server. Time and time again, we've seen that the whole foundation of it is not secure. There's many holes and people are discovering new ones all the time. So
there is an op-ed type opinion piece that's in one of these managed server provider websites. It's a wake-up call to his industry. If we keep getting hacked like this, our whole industry is going to collapse.
Yeah.
And so we'll have that in the show notes to read. And then I'm going to get a tweet to read that is from Jack Newton. He is the founder of Clio Law Firm Software, which is law firm software in the cloud. And I think they have the same with old legacy law firm software. A lot of that's hosted. And lawyers, a lot of law firms use these hosted environments. And he actually had a really good quote that I want to get. And so while I pull that up, Blake, why don't you tell us your next little piece of this you have?
My take on this is just that iNSYNQ owes more to its customers. As a CPA who has been in practice, I'm just so offended by the response on behalf of the customers. If I were a customer, this would not be acceptable to be down for 2 weeks and not have access to my files. There really should have been backups available instantly. And as a software guy, I sympathize because I work for a tech company now, and I have a behind the scenes view into the difficulty in securing environments, but that doesn't excuse the really, really poor response, both to the customers and frankly to us when we're trying to find information out for the community. To say you're going to come on the show and then not come on the show, I think is cowardly and just reflects a really poor understanding of modern public relations and how you are supposed to interact with your customers and the press, if we can even be called that. But I would hope that somebody would think of us at least as, representing the community or trying to find out stuff on behalf of the community. So that's my take.
Okay, so I found Jack's quote here, and this is a tweet from Jack Newton.
So this is the CEO of Clio, the online law firm management software.
Quote unquote, hosted cloud solutions are the unholy combination of on-premise and cloud technologies, combining the worst aspects of on-prem with a quote unquote false cloud. Hopefully this devastating ransomware attack highlights how dangerous this model is and helps kill it.
That says it all.
And I mean, for my opinion on this is I feel like you're paying a premium, right? I think I mentioned this in last week's episode. You're outsourcing your IT. All the marketing materials from all these companies is, we're going to keep you from being hacked. We have IT. We have all the security, right? You're paying a premium to outsource your IT department.
Yeah.
And in a way, you're becoming a bigger target because now instead of it just being lonely,
your small firm,
small firm, nobody cares that you even exist. They're not actively targeting you. Now you just pulled yourself in with thousands of other accountants.
Yeah.
And now you're a target. And you're paying a premium to get ransomware. It's a little bit insane. And I kind of feel like, is the pendulum completely swung the other way now, where you're putting your clients at risk because you have them on hosted, when maybe you really need to swing the other way to true QuickBooks Online Zero, true SaaS model.
Either that, or it needs to be a provider that you have personally vetted. You understand their security policies in the same way that you would vet your own at your office. And we just can't trust that these folks are doing it. And the irony, of course, is that iNSYNQ has a blog post called 5 Ways to Avoid a Ransomware Attack.
That's marketing. That's always going to happen. And just to let, obviously Rachel's here.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Rachel. And Rachel did make it. She's like, we had to inform Rachel, which was, this is not just a QuickBooks story. Rachel's with Sage, and they do Sage hosting as well. So this is affecting bigger influence.
Yeah, no. So Rachel, I know this is not your story. You didn't know we were necessarily going to talk about this or anything. I'm just curious to know, when people ask you about Sage hosting or whatnot, how does Sage handle this, or what do you guys say? So
I can't speak to the security thing, but I think one of the things that I get a lot of is that a lot of people, I think, equate Sage with desktop. And I think that we've had really strong desktop programs, which is great to fill that need. But I think I kind of need to announce to the world, hey guys, we've got a ton of cloud native products as well. We are actively migrating Sage desktop files to Sage Cloud. We do have we're working with firms who are going full on cloud. So it feels like it's a, Sage desktop versus, QuickBooks and Zero cloud world. And it just isn't. So we're actually facing the exact same things, right? Where it's cloud hosted does not equal native cloud, right? We're having all of the same conversations. So I'd be interested to see what kind of authorizations are in this case, where it's got the Intuit hosted authorized hosting team and whatever that looks like. I would definitely be interested to see what that looks like on the Sage side, to see if there are any extra steps that we take to protect the clients, for sure.
Well, I don't know a ton about the Sage desktop products, but I do know that some of the products have what I've heard described as a hybrid cloud, where the file is, it's like you take the file and Sage puts it into the cloud, and then you can read write to that file, but you're still using the desktop interface and software?
Yeah. So, there's different models. And the idea is that you're able to work fully in the desktop in a cloud connected environment, or be able to collaborate with the desktop file with your client. So for example, there's something like Sage Drive, where I can use it with my local drive, and then I can save it in Sage Drive. And then my client's going to take it down and do the work and then put it back in Sage Drive so that I can collaborate. But essentially that's just our own self-hosting. But then at least you've got our brand behind that. And we're not trying to verify other users or other companies, right?
And that's where I think Intuit may have made a mistake in this program, which is in creating these commercial authorized hosting providers. Consumers don't know what that means.
Right.
They see the Intuit brand or the logo on the website and they think that this is safe. And it's clearly not, because it's not like Intuit is going in and auditing these providers. I guess they have the right to do so, but from what I'm hearing online, like this doesn't happen. So really, they're just trusting these providers. It's a financial relationship.
But people don't read like all of the terms and conditions and FAQs when they sign up for this stuff. I'm shocked.
Amazingly, right?
I'm shocked.
Yeah. So like if Intuit isn't going to force people to go from desktop to online and they're going to allow people to keep doing hosting, then I think they should provide it themselves to like ensure security. That's just my take.
And maybe this is that domino that pushes that way, right? And it's interesting because if you go back, we talked about after scaling new heights, Right Networks, right? They're basically locking down their system a little bit. They're going to make everybody use a web-based interface, all the apps, so you don't install apps to those machines. So they're really locking down their environment even tighter, because like ultimately, it is like having hundreds and hundreds of Windows computers just sitting there with anybody doing anything they want to them. And of course, something's going to accidentally, like, even on accident, even if they're not purposely attacked, somebody's going to accidentally get something infected. And so there's lots of risk to this. Should we talk about other news? Or
I was just going to say, David, I'm looking forward to the article that will be in the show notes later that talks about kind of the demise of hosting, because I feel like if they are just now saying, hey guys, if this continues, we might be in trouble. They're how many years too late? Like, so you're already in trouble. We already need to, be moving on to be, going full cloud. I think if anyone was smart right now, they would really take this hosting spin, on a marketing trip and say, hey, we'll like do all your migrations for free. And, we'll get you over to the cloud where it really is secure. But I mean, then again, today I was just talking to a Facebook group owner who said that a bunch of his loyal followers were saying that they think the cloud is just a fad. So I like, what? Anyway, there are still people who will continue to use these services as long as they seem secure. So we'll see.
I'm okay with being a fad as long as we're the Snap bracelet of fads, because those things are awesome. Like my son has one, right? Like they don't go away. So we'll be around for a while.
Great.
And they haven't. The big problem is the marketing, which bugs me, is it grays the cloud computing.
I agree.
World,
right? It confuses people.
I'm doing my normal, not research about this. I was just getting regular articles, do my normal weekly reading of articles and news feeds, and stories for the show. And I see this one with this headline. It says 6 ways how cloud computing improves the accounting practices. I was like, hey, that could be a possible story for the show. I click on it, I start reading it. Guess what it's about? Hosted desktop QuickBooks. And that does not help anybody, because I think and I've talked to pro advisors, I've talked to small business owners. There's people that think they use QuickBooks in the cloud and they're using QuickBooks hosted, and they don't know because the messaging is so wrong. Wrong. And maybe if anything happens out of this is there's some marketing requirements and clarification of you can't say you are QuickBooks in the cloud. You have to say you are QuickBooks desktop hosted, maybe, just to create clarity on this, because it's not that it's deceiving. I mean, it's marketing, right? And that's a great word, but it drives me crazy because they've been doing that for 6 years.
Yeah, no, that's been, talking when the cloud was first coming out and you'd see those bookkeepers going, I've been in the cloud for 10 years. I'm like, no, you're desktop hosted. That's not cloud native. There's a huge difference.
This episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast is sponsored by Rewind. For years, Rewind has been successfully backing up thousands of small businesses' data that is stored in cloud apps like Shopify, BigCommerce, and MailChimp, saving these small businesses from CSV import errors, employee mistakes, and app integrations that didn't go as planned. Rewind has also been backing up QuickBooks Online company data too. That's right, Cloud Accounting World. I did say back up QuickBooks Online company data. It only takes seconds to install what is essentially an insurance policy against major disaster, for just those small business owners that like to get, quote, creative in the accounting system. Rewind works automatically in the background, capturing all the changes to your QuickBooks Online in real time. If something does go wrong, Rewind is the only service that gives you 100% control of what you need to restore, be it one transaction, multiple transactions, or all the data. To learn even more about Rewind and access a special offer just for listeners of the Cloud Accounting Podcast, head over to cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/rewind. That is cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/REWIND.
Hey, so I don't want to run out of time.
Yeah.
As much as I love talking about this.
Right. Oh, right. We've got other things to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Rachel, let's talk about AI and audits, because I am obsessed with AI. I love it. I did a webinar recently about AI for accountants, but I never talked about audit really, and well, only at a high level. So I'm just, what is going on in that world?
Sure. Well, I think that AI is one of those things, along with chatbots and blockchain and cryptocurrency. Anyway, there's a lot of buzzwords that happen when you're talking about technology in accounting and in accounting firms. And it just seems like AI is getting a little bit more traction in certain applications than things like blockchain and stuff like that. And I know, Blake, you've mentioned, the Deloitte controllership surveys where it's like nobody is doing anything with blockchain, but who is doing something with what, right? And so what I've seen about AI is that, and this came up in a previous podcast when you guys were talking about MindBridge. So mindbridge.ai is the website based out of Ottawa here in Canada.
We were talking about, they raised a bunch of money, right? Was that the story?
That's that's what made it, that's what got it to hit your headlines there.
So you know them because they're in, sorry, you said Ottawa? I apologize.
Ottawa. Yeah, no, they're in Ottawa in Canada. Of course, every Canadian knows every other Canadian. So I know those guys. Yeah. No, they just, they happen to be Sage partners of ours. We run in the same circles. We've got a lot of the same partnerships. They're a really great team over there. They're a really real pleasure to work with. And so you and I just kind of got chatting about, so what does this look like? And I think one of the interesting things about AI and audit is that everybody can understand what an audit is. When you talk about how to integrate AI with like accounting services, of course, we've seen how successful or not successful that is in some areas. But when it comes to audit, it is literally eyes on paper, reading GL reports and aligning things for hours and weeks and months at a time, right? This is the work of auditors. And so to me, this is such a natural case study to introduce technology like with AI. And so MindBridge has created an AI auditor tool, and that's all it does. It reads data and it highlights risk. Easy peasy, that's all it does.
And when you say data, is this my GL? I share this into MindBridge? Yeah,
so it has direct integrations as well as flat file uploads. So for example, one of the, I think it was Robin Grassett who narrated a 5-minute AI auditor overview on the website is actually done from an Excel file ripped from Sage 50. But it also has direct integrations. So like, for example, Intact, you could connect MindBridge with Intact, a direct integration, and it could automatically pull and feed the information that you want. And so essentially what it is 100% data sample where it simply categorizes by risk. So it's got your high risk, your medium risk, your low risk. Of course, there are things like settings and configurations that come into play here. But to me, this tool used in this way is the most clear example of the benefit of AI in an accounting application when it comes to audit.
We're getting rid of sampling. We're instead of sampling, we are auditing literally 100% of the GL.
Exactly. Yeah.
So why isn't everybody using this right now?
Right. Well, so here's the thing, and I've been kind of on a mission to find this out. So first of all, MindBridge is having some incredible successes. They have some amazing partnerships. They're going into universities. Like they're doing all of the right things to get the word out. They've got amazing content and marketing teams. Like they've been doing a phenomenal job. So then if that's the case, why do so many accounting firms either not know what it is or are not implementing it in their firms? And I came down to 3 challenges. So first is one of the reasons that I've been told is that audit regulation and standards currently do not allow for non-human auditors. Now, here's the challenge with that piece is that I have yet to actually find audit standards and regulations that indicate that it needs a certain number of human signatures or a certain number. Like I'm not a CPA myself. I don't get to see what those are.
So this is what people are like. This is what the resistance is saying.
Yes, this is what the resistance is saying. What I don't know is if those are valid. So if there happen to be any CPAs listening to this, and I'm guessing that this is something that is going to vary by state society or by country that you're certified in, but to see what exactly is it about the audit regulation that may limit technology in this. Now, the challenge with that also is that in many cases where standards and regulations aren't keeping up to snuff, sometimes a groundswell of momentum is enough to start changing some of those standards and regulations as well. So that's the first one. The second one is that too many firms think that larger sample size actually equals more problems. So they want to keep the audits limited to smaller sample sizes. And this I've seen as well is that why do we want to sample 100% of the data if we're just going to find more problems and then we're just going to have to fix the problems, or then it's just creating more problems for everybody?
Yeah, this just blows my mind.
And this is, and just keep in mind, these are multiple people have told me this. Yeah. No, I completely believe it. It's like exactly the opposite of what an auditor is supposed to think and do. Right.
And like,
I would think. My thing
the ideal
is,
situation. Yeah, please go
if
ahead.
I'm only sampling, what am I missing? Right? If I don't do 100% data, I'm going to not select for my sample those exact things that, right?
Well, and this is exactly the problem with, like, the big problem with audit everywhere, generally, it seems to be in general, is that auditors are selected and paid by their clients.
Yes.
So the clients don't want the auditors to find problems. And so the auditors don't want to find problems either, right? It just creates more work for the auditors and it makes the clients unhappy. So the goal of a really crappy auditor, or at least an auditor who doesn't care about the quality of the audit, is to do the least amount of work to pass muster without and minimize the amount of stuff you find. And so that attitude, I understand why that attitude exists, but it just points out the massive problem with the incentives. Like I hate it.
I totally agree. And that actually leads to the third challenge, Blake. It's almost like we've talked about this before, is that firms, they don't know how to charge for automation, right? How do I now deal with the internal billing structure that goes with doing a job in 6 hours instead of 3 weeks? Like, they were talking about a 20 to 900 times more likely to be let me get that quote right. MindBridge AI customers have shown that errors are 20 to 900 times more likely to be uncovered with our AI testing components contributing to the analysis. And the time savings is like, I can do in 1 hour what would take me 5 hours, or the one example that I had already also, was 6 hours instead of 3 weeks of doing a manual audit. Like, why do you not want to get this work done faster or better?
I'm sorry, say that time savings again.
Get done in one person in 6 hours, what had previously taken 2 people 3 weeks, 3 full weeks to do. But the challenge is that an accounting firm knows how to charge for 2 people for 3 weeks. Right?
Yeah.
Why would they have zero motivation to charge for one person for 6 hours? But as you can see, like I'm going to include in the show notes, there's a Michael Izza interview from ICAEW talking about I don't know how to pronounce it, whether it's Carillon or Carillion, the big construction company.
Carillion. I say Carillion, but I have no idea.
And PwC, I believe it was PwC that was auditing that one, but they've had major lawsuits between PwC and KPMG, specifically in the audit department, for doing a really crappy job. And there is, with this kind of technology out there absolutely is zero use or cause for it anymore. So
this is amazing, Rachel. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining that. I just want to say out there, like, to anyone, like, I changed my mind, Rachel, as a result of this. I used to think that client accounting services was the biggest opportunity for accounting firms right now, like big ones.
I am audit.
Yeah, I think after listening to you, it's audit. Like, and I just want to put it out there, like, hey, if you're at a top 100 firm and you're looking for somebody to restructure your audit department to use AI technology and get you on fixed fee billing, you can come and pay me $1 million and I will do it for you, because it's so easy. It's so easy. I'm like, open invitation, right? Like, and it would be like, I mean, the realization, like, if it would just be mind it would be amazing. You basically double your profits or triple or quadruple.
Yeah. I'm just going to end with my favorite quote from John Coulthart. I'm just going to call him GM of MindBridge because he wears a couple of hats, but he says, AI will not replace auditors, but auditors that use AI will replace auditors that don't, which I think is so true.
Amazing. Well, we got 2 amazing quotes in this episode.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
So just to break it to both of you, this is not a mindset of just auditors and accounting firms.
No.
So coming up, this is a lot of managers, maybe is the way to think about this. So back in my QA days, right? There's people, QA is kind of like audit, right? You're running a bunch of tests. Quality assurance. So you're running a bunch of tests. And so the QA person managers love the most is a QA person that gets done first. Hey, I ran all my tests and I found no bugs, right? Because if you find a bug, it's got to be tracked. You have to have somebody make a decision. You have to have an engineer look at it. You have to have an engineer fix it. You have to maybe change documentation. It's very expensive when you find a bug. But to be honest, like it's much cheaper to find the bug in the development cycle than to have a customer find the bug and then fix it after the fact. But it's the same mindset. People would much rather have 5 QA people come back and say, we're done with our testing. We found no bugs, because it looks better in reports. It's just easier.
It's all about setting up the right incentives. Hey, so let's try to get a few more stories in before we got to go. We don't have a lot of time. I got a story here about where should we be looking for top accounting talent?
Sure.
So you guys know that I like the Hinge Research Institute. Lee Fredrickson over there has a post on Accounting Today exactly on that topic. They did some research. And tell me what you think about this. A recent study conducted by the Hinge Research Institute revealed that most accounting firms still defer to traditional approaches for attracting prospects, meaning they're using job ads, fairs, topping the list, right? But unfortunately, the data says that's not where top prospects are looking for the next career move. The number one way that top talent wants to get recruited is on LinkedIn. That's where they're going to find and research possible new employers. So that's 86% of job seekers. But only 66% of firms are actively using LinkedIn for job candidates, a 20 percentage point gap. So that's the takeaway, right? If you want to recruit and retain top talent, you got to get away from this old, job fairs and ads, and you got to be online.
Well, it's the definition of insanity, right? Like when I go and I talk to all the firms that I do, and I talk to hundreds and thousands in a year, and they are very clear about recruiting is one of their top challenges, retention, and retraining. Those 3 things are not technological issues or technology issues. Those are people issues. The challenge is that they're not changing anything about how the firm is structured to actually change that. So in this case, we're going to keep doing the same things. We know things are changing. We know we want different things out of our employees now, but we're going to keep doing the same thing and hope for different candidates. It's all the same pipeline at this point. You've got to start changing the pipeline.
That's great. Well, what else is new in the world, David?
I got 2 quick IRS related stories.
Let's hear it.
For 2 kind of related things, crypto and cash.
Okay.
So this week, the IRS is now sending out letters. They've sent out what it calls our quote unquote educational letters to taxpayers that it is identified for folks that have not reported their virtual currency transactions or reporting them incorrectly.
Yeah, educational letters is just code for like threats, right? I mean, these are, I saw some of these letters basically saying like, report your crypto profits or you are screwed, right?
Well, they're intended to help taxpayers understand their tax filing obligations for cryptocurrency. But the big one is that by 10,000 letters are going to go out by the end of August. So chances are, if you're in tax, you're probably going to come across something.
Well, I'm glad it's like 10,000 because that means I probably am not getting caught up in this since, way more than that, way more people than that are transacting in cryptocurrency.
And then on the other story, the CEO of a pot company in Colorado, John Lord, went to the bank with $3 million in physical cash to make a deposit to a local IRS office to pay his federal taxes.
I wish I had been working at that office that day. How cool would that be?
And he recently testified. There's a committee looking into, figuring out how to deal with banking regulations, because a lot of people don't want to touch this money because they're afraid the DEA is going to come in. So banks don't want to touch this. And he testified there that he once rented a bank, a former bank, just so he could use the vault to store all his cash.
That's amazing.
And these are legit guys running around with that much cash.
Yeah. Hey, Rachel, cannabis is legal in Canada.
Yes.
Do you guys, so you don't have a problem with banking, right, with it? It's not like here,
no.
right?
We will take your money.
Yeah. Wow.
Actually, I think the cannabis industry has been interesting for lots of different and other subsequent industries or related industries.
Well, here in the U.S., we still like to use paper checks, and for certain things, we like to use physical paper money.
Yes.
So that's how we roll. No pun intended.
And it just shows how much money is in that industry. And kind of a preview, we last week at the accounting and finance show in LA, we did interview somebody, an accountant, him and his son that are
Bruce Anderson and Thomas Anderson,
who team up and they take on cannabis clients. And it was a very good interview, and it ties into this.
Yeah, we'll be releasing that in the next few weeks. I got a story here that I've been hoarding that I haven't had a chance to talk about, but I feel like we should, because I keep thinking back onto it. Remember the Expensify 2 Chainz Super Bowl ad?
Oh, yeah. Commercial, yeah.
Expensify, man, they like to blow their entire marketing budget in one thing every year, right? If it's a invite-only conference in Bora Bora, or if it is, a music video with 2 Chainz and Adam Scott from Parks and Recreation. Well, I'm really curious to know how that paid off for them. Like if it paid off, if they got a ton of users. Yeah, like because is it worth spending? I don't know how much they spent, but I'm guess like say $5 million, right, to do that whole thing. Well, they did win 7 awards at the Cannes International Festival of Creativity for their music video. Among the awards were the top prize, the Gold Lion, in the categories of production of exclusive artist content in partnership with a brand or cause and use of original music.
So I thought it was a special effect. You can take a photo of a receipt and put it into an accounting system. This must be special effects.
This is magic.
Yeah, amazing.
No,
right?
I'm sure it's just a fad, right? All those cloud people. It's just a fad.
Yeah, exactly.
How trendy is that?
What else? I got lots more stories, but I don't want to monopolize.
Rachel,
I just want to, you might have to cut this in, Blake. David, it took me a little while to find David. It's about the IRS thing. So there's this post going around social media right now about the IRS announcement. It says, confusing, doing your taxes, confusing-er, understanding cryptocurrencies, confusing-est, doing your taxes when you own cryptocurrencies. The IRS is sympathetic, but Uncle Sam waits for no one. And then it goes on with the announcement of the rest of the post. So I thought that was pretty entertaining.
That's clever. Anytime you can attach a meme to an IRS announcement, right? Like by all means, right? It should be done. Yeah. And of course, like for those who are not familiar with the problems of taxation and cryptocurrency, the big issue is that the IRS treats it as an asset. So every single transaction, you have to compute gains and losses.
Right, and not a currency.
And it just makes, and of course, valuing cryptocurrency is difficult because there is no NASDAQ for crypto. There is no like single market maker. And so like, how do you choose what numbers to use? So there's an entire software world now actually just around like importing your crypto transactions and calculating all those gains and losses. I
met an app last week. I cannot remember the name of it, but essentially you connect all 5,000 different possible crypto wallets that are out there, and they'll track all your, it's almost like online bank feeds, but for your crypto transactions, they pull it all together and they let you know your gains and losses and then do export files out for tax software.
Thank God for that, right? Otherwise, it would be Excel nightmare. Speaking of Excel, and we talked about malware earlier, Microsoft Excel has a feature that can be abused for malware distribution.
Oh, no.
If you have Power Query enabled in Microsoft Excel, which comes turned on by default, apparently hackers can abuse Power Query, which has this feature where it goes out to other servers and pulls in data from the internet, right? Which is kind of an open backdoor. If you open up the wrong Excel file and you have Power Query turned on, it can be used to run malicious code on your system with minimal interaction. So just a warning, Microsoft has decided not to patch it because that is actually an intended feature of Power Query. So just do not open up an Excel file from somebody you don't know.
Wow.
Got it.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
So the future of accounting is not Excel? I just wanted to be clear.
Well, I mean, Maybe I don't know. We'll let our listeners decide.
Okay.
Especially if it's an attachment. Don't use attachments of Excel.
Yeah.
I have some stories on small business lending. Remember, we've been talking about this, and we've been wondering like how viable some of these companies are.
Yeah.
In some direction. So
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of changes happening in that space as we speak. So the first story is SMB lender OnDeck is actively pursuing a bank charter. And so they said they're because they want to offer a wider range of products and find cost efficiencies. But really, if you read deeper in the article, effective August 3rd, JP Morgan Chase no longer intends to originate new small business loans through OnDeck's platform.
Really?
Now
wonder why that is.
They are looking to partner with others. One thing that I initially thought was, because Intuit and QuickBooks Capital, Intuit is very deeply involved with Chase. Like, is that going to be an announcement we see soon? Is a deeper partnership with QuickBooks Capital? The one thing that was in the article that I thought was really interesting was the stats. So online lenders approved 57% of all small business loan applications in June. 50% were approved at small banks and 27% at big banks. So it's very obvious that this model of these app first models that have access to accounting data are giving out the most loans.
Yeah. And probably not the highest quality loans.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say, why else would Chase be getting out of it?
Yeah. And so
maybe they've had some bad results.
And so just another loan player, Lendio, who's also in this space, they've taken it one more step further. They actually completely acquired an accounting app. They acquired an accounting app, Billy, rebranded it as a new product called Sunrise, and they're giving it away for free. So use this app to do all your cloud accounting, and they can target loans to you. What's interesting, though, buried in their article is, I'm going to read the quote here, okay? You tell me what this sounds like. When you sign up for a paid version, Sunrise will assign a bookkeeper within 48 hours, and moving forward, they'll reconcile your books each month.
Wait, what?
All right, I'll read this again. Tell me what this sounds like.
Yeah.
When you sign up for a paid version, Sunrise, which is the accounting app, will assign a bookkeeper within 48 hours. And moving forward, they will reconcile your books each month.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
It's another QuickBooks Live play. Everybody's doing it. Now, this is a small business lender that's doing a QuickBooks Live play.
Wow, that's a new one. I had yeah.
I mean, we're continuing to see this convergence of bank and or payments, plus GL, and then plus a service piece, right? Like, I mean, name H&R Block and Wave, right? Books to tax, plus they've got service providers. What else was it? Oh, RBC in Canada. So the Royal Bank of Canada acquired WayPay, which is a payments provider. And then they're also working with small business, and they've got some other things going on as well. Like, I think we're just going to continue to see these multiple convergences of like bank and payments, GL, and then some level of service. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, Blake, you and I have talked about this is kind of the Wild West, right? A lot of these companies are based out of Utah because there's no limits on usury that you can charge. Well, there is news now. California has proposed lending rules, and they're getting more support for this. So the Department of Business Oversight, they've worked with a company. I'm taking this as a coalition, the Responsible Business Lending Coalition, and they are proposing legislation and regulation to control truth in lending protections for small business owners. And so I'll just read the quote from them. The proposed regulations recognize that small business financing has changed, as many small businesses now commonly pay effective APRs of higher than 50% and sometimes as high as 350% without these rates ever being disclosed again to them.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think I've always felt about all these alternative lending situations. It's like very easy. Click here, get $10,000, and then you're kind of paying it back. They're gray. It's half invoice refactoring. It's half not. It's very confusing, and people don't know the rates they're paying.
So I'm in favor of regulations to require these lenders to disclose the APR on any of these transactions, but I am not supportive of restricting businesses from taking these loans if they want to, because some may have no other option. And if they think it's a good idea, then fine, right? They're business owners. And I think it's fundamentally different than like usury laws around payday loans, because some of that's an education problem, right? And I don't know. I'm not a fan of, I think there should be disclosure, but not necessarily like restricting the amount that can be charged.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more about this as well, because I think, again, we've talked about it before, Elizabeth Warren. This is another thing that could show up and to become a political issue for the election.
Oh,
Small
yeah.
business
Elizabeth
loans.
Warren loves to...
She wants to be on the podcast.
Loves to tell...
I think she wants to be on our podcast.
I would love to have Elizabeth Warren on the podcast to ask her about cloud accounting and what the government should be doing to regulate cloud accounting.
I have another, some kind of related to payments that's going to blow your mind.
Okay.
All right. So this is the headline is MasterCard tackling AP automation's last mile. But this article had two amazing stats. So they're talking about a little bit more enterprise, bigger companies, Fortune 500, right? 59% of firms have yet to tackle payments automation.
Doesn't surprise me.
This is the better
sad
one.
Stat, but
What's the other one? Paper checks make up 51% of corporate payments.
Wow.
Oh, boy. Yeah. And imagine being that Canadian company that's getting all those checks from U.S. customers. Like, you're like, God.
No more. Please no more. No, well, right? I mean, this to me, this is one of the glaringly ways in which the US is behind pretty much everywhere else, right? Like if you talk to an Australian or if you talk to somebody from the UK or from Europe, they're like, we did away with checks like how many years ago? Canadians, we still use them, but they are certainly an exception. They are not, right? It's how do I pay one out of my 100 people who I'm doing a payroll run for, that one person who still wants a check? But it's so prevalent in the US that I don't know what's going to start bending or tipping that.
Well, I think it's going to be the next recession because I love these metric of the month stats that they have on CFO.com that I share from the APQC benchmarking surveys. And one that keeps coming back that I keep using in presentations I give is that the least efficient corporate finance departments have 4 times more employees than the most efficient ones. If you're efficient, you can have 25% of the staff of an inefficient department. And that is mostly because of people with paper checks. Like it's literally, that's probably a lot of it.
But all the stats, like the amount that it costs, the amount of time that it costs to process a check, the amount of money it costs to process a check, like all of the data is pointing that. I don't know if it maybe has to do with the fact that there are 7,000 banks in Canada as opposed to like the 5 main ones in Canada and the 4 main ones in Australia. But I certainly think that probably has something to do with it, just the ability to move money, right?
Yeah. So any other stories before we go?
I think Gusto raised another $200 million. They are going to expand the East Coast. And I think the interesting one is they plan on building out something called Gusto Flexible Pay. That's for employees. I know you mentioned payday loans before. So it's not a payday loan, but there's another company that also does this earn-in. So as soon as you clock out at the end of the day, they use your time data. They know you're going to get paid for 8 hours. You could actually just get that money early and deposit in your bank account.
They're floating the cash to the employees, but the employer can still keep their every 2-week pay schedule. Yeah,
this will be the death to payday loan places for sure.
I hope so.
You won't need one. You'll just, I had to put braces on my kid.
And studies show that if your employees get paid every day using this, they are more productive because they see the fruit of their labor right away.
That's it for me.
All right. Well, hey, Rachel, if people want to connect with you online, where's the best place for them to do that?
Best place is Twitter at Fischbooks, FISCHBOOKS.
And how about you, David?
At David Leary.
And I am at Blake T. Oliver. And if you want to do us a favor, leave us a review on iTunes or on your podcast player of choice. We will read it on the air. And David, I forgot, did we miss any this week? I think we didn't get any this week, right?
No reviews this week, but you know what would be just as good as a review?
What's that?
Is when you're, at dinner with one of your accountant friends or bookkeeping friends, pull out their phone and subscribe them to the Cloud Accounting Podcast.
You tried to do this at some conferences recently, David, and people did not want to give you their phones.
No, nobody wanted to let me touch their phone and do that. But hey, if it's a friend, you can do that.
I will say I got an email from a partner at a firm that I've been working with for a while now. And he said, so I'm listening to this Cloud Accounting podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, I told you to listen to that. And he goes, I'm listening to this podcast and they've said your name a couple of times. And he goes, it sounds so cool. So anyway, people are listening, even if they're not reviewing.
Yes. Somebody at the conference in LA came up to me. It's always good when somebody you absolutely never met before, you don't know, and they're like, I listen to the podcast. That's great. And
that's so great.
It's always really good that people really listen to us. It's great.
So yes, thank you to all our listeners for helping us get to this point. We are almost at 100 episodes. We are this is, I think, 99. I'm not sure because the publishing order may change, but we're very close. And if we haven't already hit it, and thank you everyone who has helped us get this far. It's crazy to think where we've come in really just about a year. And hopefully we'll get more cloud accountants into the podcast world and beyond in the years to come.
For sure. Awesome job, good.
Thanks, Rachel. Good to talk to you. Bye, David.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, you too. Bye.